family. How is everybody doing? Happy Halloween. You have to find joy wherever you can find joy. And that's just where I am with everything right now. That just is what it is, fam. Listen. You know, we have to we have to have a conversation, and the conversation is just what it is. I don't make the conversation, but I do like to have a little Halloween joy in the beginning, because that's something that we have to kind of figure out how to do, like how to have a little happiness, have a little joy. We can't let everything kind of just bog us down, fam. So let that be a lesson to you. Let that be a lesson to you to find your joy. Okay. Don't y'all get caught off in no Halloween madness now. I didn't last year. I don't know if y'all remember, but last year I had a skeleton sitting in the seat when I came on live on Halloween. But I don't really like to go out unnecessarily during the COVID, so I didn't have that this time. But we shall do something like that again at some point. Now listen, fam, the half has never been told. I didn't bring the image up for this episode, but that is the book on December the 10th. The half has never been told. That is the book that we will be reading. I tried to draw some fire up here. Didn't work out quite right, but give me a break. But that is the book that we will be reading. December the 10th is book club. So do not forget. Please, if you have just come in here, please hit that like button. Please hit that share. Please go. Cost you nothing to hit that like button. Cost you nothing to hit that bell, right? To make sure you get notifications. To hit that subscribe button. That costs you nothing as well. So please go ahead and hit that. That is appreciated. If you want to donate, you all know what to do. $breakingbrown, donatebrown.com, patreon.com/ycarnell. But also go to subscribetobrown.com. Costs you nothing. Subscribetobrown.com, TO, and add your name to my email list. Costs you absolutely nothing. That's free. Hitting that bell is free. Hitting that like button right now is free if you are in here. So if you are in here, that is absolutely free, and I absolutely appreciate it, because we're going to have to talk about something. And I'm going to try to get finished with the show a little bit early, because I want to kind of have a conversation, because I know when we talk about mental health, people are going through things as well, and I want to give you all an opportunity to have the conversation. A lot of times we kind of rush people towards the end, and I understand that kind of makes sense in terms of what we're doing, for people to be concise. But I also want this to be a space where people feel like this is a familial, tribal space, and we are here for each other in a lot of different ways. So I want that to happen as well. I don't know if you all saw it. But Biden said there's no excuse for the looting, to the Philadelphia protests. And if you all did not see him, here's exactly what he said. This is in the Hill. I will bring that up bigger and read it so you can see it, because we're going to have a conversation that involves this, right? So it's best that you know early on, right? Joe Biden speaks on Philadelphia unrest. Reporter, what do you say to Philadelphia residents that are outraged by yet another unarmed black man being shot by police? And here's what Biden had to say. What I say is that there is no excuse whatsoever for looting and violence. There is no excuse whatsoever for looting and violence. Now listen. For those of you who are unaware, I understand we work a lot, things happen. You may not be aware that there was a black man who was killed by police. He had a knife. And the family had called for an ambulance. The family didn't call for an executioner. The family called because he was behaving in a way, and they knew that he had issues, that he had mental health issues, right? And so the police had been there 3 times that same day. His name, Walter Wallace. Now, if you've been there 3 times, you absolutely know that this young man is suffering from a mental health crisis. You keep getting called and they keep telling you, we need some help, we need an ambulance, we need whatever. You know what's happening in that situation. And the person has a knife, not a gun. The person has a knife. And you unloaded. From what I saw, I read that it was a dozen bullets that were unloaded into someone with a knife. This black man, not just someone. We've seen this time and time again, especially recently. So there was predictably and understandably an uproar in the city based on what had happened. How can you not? Right? How can you not? Now here's the thing. Biden is telling us it's a very interesting thing. Biden is telling us like, no, you should not do that. Let me see if I can find this other image because this is going to be important. But Biden is saying there are no excuses for what happened, for the violence. But nothing surpasses Joe Biden. Nothing surpasses the violence you inflicted on this community. When you talked in a very violent way about, hey, our crime bill is so high, it's so rough. It did everything but hang people for jaywalking. That's very violent. When you say things like that, that's a very violent thing to say. See, I think when we talk about, there are certain people that should not be the arbiters of morality. If your whole project ended with a generation of black men being incarcerated and warehoused in prison, you don't get to tell me what there is no excuse for. You are an immoral person. You are an immoral old white man. You don't get to tell me there's no excuse for this, but I understand why you're doing it. I absolutely understand why you're doing it. You and Trump are competing for that white vote, right? Even that Latino vote to a large part. People who want to keep their spaces. You don't care about justice, but you care about law and order. Please don't let the Negroes come here. They cause trouble. I understand they're oppressed, but I don't want to see that here where I am. So I understand what you're doing in terms of winning votes. But what I'm telling you, Mr. Biden, is that you are not going to win votes on our backs. The day of us being the mule for the Democratic Party is over. Now, we always vote Democrat. And as such, we should really own the party and we should dictate what happens to us. You don't get to dictate what happens to us and what we do and how we move. We should dictate what happens to us because voting is an exchange. I don't care what Barack Obama told you. He don't know what he's talking about. Voting is transactional. I give you my vote in exchange for a set of policies that you have told me work for me. So you tell me I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I say, listen, I have a problem. As a voter, I want X, Y, and Z. And you tell me I have all of that. And I'm going to give it to you. And then I decide to vote for you. That's why voting is an exchange. It's not a gift. It's not a grift. Right? But what we have to understand here, I think we have a problem sometimes when people start trying to preach to us and tell us what we should and shan't not do. You shan't not. You shan't not, Negroes, talk bad about a Democrat. You shan't not talk bad about Biden. You shan't not. You don't get to tell me anything about what I should do or should not do. That is not your job. As a leader, my job is to represent my people. That's it. And lead them to the fulfillment of what they should have. And should have had a long time ago. That is the job here. That is job one. You don't get to tell them no. And Biden, oh my goodness, Joe Biden, your past is too awful for you to start talking to me about morality. Remember the stuff you said about kids, schools becoming jungles and all kinds of wild stuff like that? You don't get to preach to me about anything. You just don't get to do it. Understand that warehousing black people, especially black men in cages, is a form of violence. It is a form of, I think it's actually worse than violence, honestly, when I think about it. Because violence is you can take out a knife and you can slash somebody. That heals. And unless you hit an artery or something, you're going to be okay. What happened with mass incarceration is that you rendered a group of black people, especially black men, you rendered them dead men walking. You can't find a job. You can't do nothing. Ask anybody who's been in that situation. Read the article about George Floyd that I put up the other week. What happens if you have a record is that you can't participate in the country that your ancestors built. Joe Biden was an architect of that. You don't get to preach to me, Joe, about what is moral and about what is right and about what is legitimate protest and what is not legitimate protest. You have behaved immorally. You don't have a perch to stand on anymore. We are tearing down this perch of whiteness that everybody stands on. That's nothing but a skin color. It don't mean nothing, and you ain't special. And you don't get to just kind of bring everybody into it and leave ADOS out. We tearing all of that down. And I know you mad about it. I hear about it. That's okay. I don't care. Okay? So that's my first problem with this. My second problem is, is something else, right? When we look at what happened and we look at the protests, we've seen these protests. I think we've seen these protests. How many places do we keep count of how many places we have seen these protests this summer? Like, we're in fall now, but this summer, how many places have we seen this protest? I can't keep count, and I try to keep count. I can't keep count. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Arbor. We can't keep count of the numbers of us who are murdered by police officers who are charged with not just protecting, which it should be, but also maintaining and protecting wealth, right? And that's nothing new. Let's just go back for a second. Well, I think we'll get to that later. Because I want to bring that in at the end, because this whole thing is not anything new to us. It may be new to some people. It's not new to us, right? But what we can't do is let Joe Biden tell us what to do, because let me just say this. It's one thing we don't have the wealth, right? We don't have the wealth. We know we don't have the wealth. It's wrong, and we're pushing for reparations now. We don't have the wealth. We know it. We wrong, right? We know. I'm talking about, like, in terms of like what other people say. Well, y'all are just not right. No, we understand what we're doing, and we understand why the push for reparations matters. We understand what the plunder means in terms of our everyday life. But there's something else that we have to talk about. Wealth is central. It is the cornerstone. Because America is so wealthy, it is the foundation of everything. The foundation of whether you have a good life and your kids that come after you have a good life, the people around you, whether you can help them, support them. It is the foundation of that. That's wealth. But one thing we don't talk about enough is how America has plundered everything else from us too. It's not just wealth. Wealth is the most central thing. It is not the only thing. So we have here, we talk about bear our pain, the plea for more black mental health workers. One of the things, before I even read anything from this, one of the things that you have to understand is that we don't have more mental health workers because America didn't build ADOS America. America stole from us. So even when we went to college, We didn't have the money to go to college. America said, okay, here you go. Go in a bunch of debt and you can go to college. And we said, oh, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to have a degree. Whoopie doopie doopie doop. Whoopie doop doop. Whoopie doop doop. That's what we said. Because we have always wanted to be the best. I'm not mocking us. I'm mocking them. We have always wanted to be our best. We have always wanted to be American, like in the truest sense of the word. But what happened is they gave us degrees. It cost a bunch of money. And we didn't have no money. And they gave us loans. And then not only did they burden us with debt, when we got out of college, there was no way to plug that into. Hey, where's my plug? I got this plug thing, college, this degree. I worked really hard for it. And I don't have no plug. So understand that. So we got locked out of wealth. Really locked. We for a long time locked out of education. When we did get education, we didn't have anything to plug it into. Plugs and outlets. And also, we got locked out of, like, which means when we don't have an outlet, we get locked out of being therapy. For our own people who need therapy. For our own people who need something to bear. Let me tell you. Let me just say this. I want to just say this. My email is public. Right? It's editor@breakingbrown.com. I cannot share with you the number of people who have emailed me, ADOS, speaking about the mental health crisis that they are either currently in or they're apologizing for. And when I say apologizing for, I have had people email me during a mental health crisis, and the email is kind of incoherent. I read it. I don't really know what it means, but I leave it. And then the person comes back and emails me, Yvette, I'm sorry. Yvette, I apologize. I was really going through something yesterday, and I don't even remember sending this email to you. Right? And the only thing that I can do is try to send you some help. And we don't have enough help to send you because America didn't build us to help us. Do you know how many suicidal emails I get and try to kind of reach back? Do you know what ends up in my email box? I see it. I see it myself. I don't need nobody to tell me what we're going through. It's in my inbox. Right? And when I think about people who say, Yvette, you saved me from suicide, I think about the people who I couldn't save because I know they were there. That's just what it is. We have a problem that America helped put on us because of the racism and everything. I'm not saying that certain things don't come from that, but you exacerbate our mental illness when you do what you do, when America behaves by how it behaves. And then when that happens, let me just go back for 1 second. When that happens, and we see America clean for what it is, Joe Biden and the rest of America, Trump too, Trump said it first. Joe Biden is just mimicking MAGA. Trump said it first. They say, you're going to be punished for your reaction to the violence that we have inflicted upon you. Wait a minute. I'm going to be punished. So let me just say this. So understand that grief is kind of love and sadness with nowhere to go. If you lose somebody, you're grieving. But that love has nowhere to go. That's the thing that turns into the sadness. You have a bunch of love that got nowhere to go. And so you grieve because the thing that you love or the person that you love is gone. They're not on this earthly plane anymore. So you grieve because that all that love is still in you, but you can't put it in that person. Rage. In terms of the riots, that's rage with nowhere to go. So I'm going to tear everything now. I don't care. I'm in pain. I have rage, and that's where it goes. And Joe Biden is going to tell us, you have no right to that. 400 years of oppression, and you have no right to that rage. Who is he to tell us that? Who is he to say that? By what right is Joe Biden telling us what we have a right to? Sir, you oppose busing. You were friends with segregationist senators. You did everything. You mass architect of mass incarceration. You helped create the pain that we see out there now. don't talk to me about family and all this stuff when you put the men in the jail. Well, why? We got a lot of single family. Yeah, you absolutely do. Because who is she supposed to marry? Her husband is probably somewhere in a supermax jail. Because you decided that it was good for you to do that. But let me tell you, you're not an arbiter now. You're not an arbiter of what is moral and what is immoral. Because you are an immoral politician, and we know that. You don't get to play games no more. When a family calls 911 for an ambulance, and police send police, the 911 sends police, and so you gun down the man with the knife. You could have outrun him. I don't even know what you was doing. He wasn't. When you do that, you are not even just not the arbiter of morality. You do not represent anything moral in this world. So shut up, Joe Biden. Don't tell me nothing. Nobody asked you nothing. We know you. We know you just pulling for white people now. But let me go back to the article, because the article is built off of a black person, a black man, I think, who was. Y'all remember that Parkland shooting, where that mass shooter inside the school and all of that? So it kind of talks to him about why he wanted a black therapist. So let's just talk a little bit about it and we'll continue. Finding a black therapist really saved me sometime, and there was more connection in terms of the kinds of struggles that I might feel, or the kinds of ways I might think about certain scenarios, Cobra says. Now, a rising sophomore at the University of California, Berkeley, Cobra says having access to good mental health care is critical to both preventing and dealing with the aftermath of violence. Now, let me just come out here for a sec. Who knows more about dealing with violence than ADOS? How many of our communities are violent? And let me just say this up front. This is kind of why I haven't said a lot, but this is always why I've kind of had a problem with the whole defund police movement. A lot of people just jumped on board. It's not because I want police. It's because I want you to be safe. You deserve to be safe. You deserve police that don't kill you, to look at you. We deserve to be protected. Not some kind of outlaw universe. We deserve protection. But you have to turn the whole apple cart over. You have to undo and redo the whole system for that to happen. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether we're ready for that fight. But let's go back to this young man about his struggle in terms of what happened to him after that mass shooting, right? Dr. Real Boy says many members of the black community feel emotionally raw and tapped out. We haven't been asked to publicly bear our pain as frequently as we are now, and we haven't had to witness other black folks publicly bearing their pain about it as frequently as we are now, said Boyd, a Bay Area pediatrician who studies the effects of police violence. She says racism's toll threads through the psyche, manifesting in many ways and shaping the youngest of brains. The youngest of brains. She worries most black girls for whom suicide risk is increasing, not just among teenagers, but preteens as well. It's increasing among all black teens, for the record, if you all want to know the truth. Suicide is increasing amongst all black young people. I don't have a hard time figuring that out. Misdiagnosis prevalent. Misdiagnosis of black people, Shim says, is still prevalent today, often by non-black doctors who misread emotional cues like anger. We look at these things and call them disruptive behaviors. We misdiagnose young people with things like conduct disorder instead of the result of chronic trauma from racism, because many physicians haven't experienced it, Shim says. For many Black patients, access to mental health treatment often comes in places of last resort. Pay attention. Jails, schools, emergency rooms. And studies show, and I would add to that, in jail, schools, emergency rooms, I would add to that rehab. The only place a lot of ADOS are getting treatment is rehab. When they have become addicted to something, and whether it's heroin, cocaine, crack, that's when they get actual treatment. That's too late. So let me finish this last little part. And studies show that African Americans tend to be given psychiatric diagnoses that are incorrect, especially severe or less treatable, such as schizophrenia instead of depression or bipolar disorder, and that can lead to inappropriate treatment. So not surprisingly, Black patients who do get treatment tend to fare worse than their white counterparts. So you get misdiagnosed. Let me come out here just 1 second. You get misdiagnosed. So schizophrenia is something that you can really treat, like bipolar or depression. So we just gonna call you schizophrenic or whatever, and throw you in whatever bag we throw you into. That's how we gonna figure out how to treat you. Now, America, we created this, and we created the thing that you're going through, but we're not really keen on treating it and fixing it. Doesn't that sound familiar, family? Doesn't that sound familiar in terms of what has happened to us throughout our history in this country? Doesn't that sound familiar? You took the wealth, you take the treatment. We can't even, listen, I've said it before, but you have to understand, America won't even allow us to bear our own mental health problems without shooting us in the street. So, okay, you acting up, you got problems or whatever. Yeah, you called an ambulance, I understand, but I'm just gonna murder you right here. How about that? Yeah, I know you were probably like a Black, or an ADOS person to deal with your problems or whatever. But yeah, we ain't really with it. So nah, we're not finna do it. So we didn't build ADOS into anything. So we're just gonna send the police with their guns and bullets. Even though we've been here a few times, we just gonna send the police. How about that? That's not okay. And let me just say one thing else. COVID was a mofo. In the sense that, listen, we haven't had wealth. We talked about that. We don't have wealth, but wealth and income are not the same. That's one thing we know, right, family? Wealth and income are not the same. We never had wealth because we were plundered. COVID took away income too. What do you think that does to mental health? Somebody tell me, what do you think that does to mental health? When you take away, not only we already didn't have any wealth, you already robbed us of that with the slavery and the Jim Crow and the black codes and the mass incarceration, some evil stuff. You not only robbed us of that, but COVID robbed us of income. So how do you not know what that's going to lead to in terms of how we internalize that? Then when we internalize that, if we in the street with knives and hollering and cussing and all kind of crazy stuff, you just shoot us. So there's no way for us to kind of bear our own break, because people are breaking everywhere. ADOS are breaking because we're at a breaking point. And let me tell you something. The only way to move outside of that breaking point is collectively. Some of you have been emailing me stuff that don't make no sense. Let me just address it here. You are not going to outdo the United States government on your own with some kind of weird plan. Especially if it looks kind of violent or something like that. And I'm not with it. Let me say that right now. You are not going to do it that way. That's not going to work. They have weakened us to a point to where we rise together or fall together. Decide whether or not you are part of this team and tribe. That's it. That's all you can do. Now is the time for cohesion. That's the only way we get what we owed. If we organize together and rise together, you're not going to get it no other way. I'm sorry if somebody told you, stop beating your chest or whatever. This is not about your individual ego. We are a collective and we have to rise as a group. Of course, there will be structure and all this stuff in terms of we doing ADOS. We talked about that, hierarchical. We talked about that because I believe in accountability. So when anything happens with ADOS, somebody comes to me, Vet, your people did this. Okay. I'll take that. But that means I'm a leader and leadership matters. That means I'm accountable. That means other leaders matter. Right? In terms of how we set up structure, all that stuff matters. That's why the military has a structure for a very specific reason, to win wars. What do you think we're doing here? Not a violent war, but we're having a political one. You got to get on board. There's no other way about this. There's no other way around this. And everybody has to begin to kind of come to terms with that. Let me just put this up while we finish up this part. The scarcity of Black mental health professionals in the U.S. is now an acute problem, says Dr. Alpha Stewart, a Memphis psychiatrist who became the first Black president of the American Psychiatric Association 2 years ago. I get calls from people asking, can't you refer me to a Black psychiatrist? And because there are so few of us, I'm limited in how many of those people's referrals I can make to their satisfaction. Stewart says, and that contributes to a lack of faith in healthcare among African Americans. Stewart sees signs of hope. In recent years, Black celebrities in sports and entertainment, like former NBA star Ron Artest, radio personality Charlamagne the God, Leonard, and people who have gotten mental health screening. Listen, that's not going to pay for it. The fact that these people have gotten, that's great. It's wonderful that they're talking about it. But that's not going to pay for it, and that's not going to get you a Black psychiatrist. And some of these people are doing it for the attention. It's a whole thing going on right now, but I can be mental health, and I can talk about it, and I can get on TV, and people going to want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about how people are trying to grift off this, but I'll talk about it. I ain't got no problem with it. I have no problem with it. And I want to speak specifically also to people who are like, well, Yvette, we got to do XYZ because it can't get no worse. It can't get no worse than it is right now. Let me tell you something. If you ain't dead, it can always get worse. I want to kind of bring that up. I want to make sure we understand that it can always get worse. So let me just bring something up. This is from like 1986. Because what happens when you have no wealth in a country like this? You have no power. So I just want to bring this up really quick because people always say, "Man, it can't get no worse. We gotta take to the da 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 da." That's your thing. Start your own movement somewhere if you want to just take to da 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 da. And we gotta be da 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 da. No, take that somewhere. Call the police. No, call in the Pinkerton men. Well, what are the Pinkerton men, Yvette? I don't understand. Okay, well here we go. The motto was the eye that never sleeps. They chased bank robbers, rogues, thieves, the legendary Jesse James, the train robbery, Reno Brothers gang of Indiana, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were among their prey. They were the Pinkertons, at one time the best known detectives in the U.S. I'm going somewhere, just stay with me. Alan Pinkerton founded Pinkerton's National Detective Agency in Chicago in 1850 at a time when public distrust of police intrusion in private affairs was prevalent, and the citizenry had little confidence in the poorly trained part-time constables and night watchmen who comprised the official police. Even after the Chicago Police Department was formed in 1855, wealthy residents, I'm going to say it one more time, continue to pay gladly to private police related services. In addition, the growth of industry made adequate surveillance and protection a necessity for expanding businesses. In such a climate, Pinkerton spawned the detective as entrepreneur, and other private agencies following his lead flourished during the 1850s and 60s. And I saw somewhere that like he supported John Brown, the abolitionist. But I'm just saying there were some other things here as well as we talk about private police and how this thing can get worse. Pinkerton was already a successful businessman before becoming a master sleuth. An avowed social reformer in his native Scotland, he became a multimillionaire while we were basically still slaves. That's as an immigrant. That's interesting. As an avowed social reformer in his native Scotland, who aggressively advocated for the rights of the working class, Pinkerton fled to America to avoid government persecution. And eventually found employment as a cooper, barrel maker in Dundee, Illinois. There he became active in local politics, making a name for himself in abolitionist circles. There we go. He was among those who helped John Brown to escape to Canada. In filling a need that government police agencies weren't meeting adequately, Pinkerton made private police work $1 million business. His detectives diligently kept watch over railroad conductors to ensure their honesty, infiltrated labor unions, and to discover secrets, monitored employees to discourage company thefts, and used informers to trail the pickpockets who followed the traveling circuses and Wild West shows. When Pinkerton died in 1884 and sons William and Robert took over, the agency had grown from a one-man operation to a force more than 2,000, competing with 14 other private detective firms in the city. Robert was noted for his strong administrative skills, but it was William, the more flamboyant of the two, who had captured the limelight and became the darling of the press. He was always in the news, known affectionately as Billy, the 200-pound mustachioed gumshoe who frequented saloon hangouts and racetrack, was an expert on criminal activities and of the underworld. And understand how powerful they were. When we talk about, well, we were locked out and everybody else was locked in, the state of Ohio outlawed the Pinkertons for fear that they could form an army outside of the purview of government. So when I say that it can always get worse, part of what I'm saying to you, and part of what we're seeing in the privatization America, is that we can have a Pinkerton American again, whether or not he's a slave, whatever. Well, he support the abolition, that's fine, but you ain't going to support the stuff that I need. You're going to be private. And remember what they said about the wealthy. We're already seeing that in terms of schools, right? We're going to get to that in just one second. So let me just say this. This is also from The Atlantic about the agency's the case of the vanishing private eyes. With the agency's success came controversy. During the pitched battles between laborers and business owners that marked the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Pinkertons were on the sides of the owners, paid to take an active, violent role in breaking strikes. Painted as marauders by the striking steel workers of Homestead in 1892, the Pinkertons lost the support of a segment of the middle class, reading public when reports of their bloody engagements with striking workers came to light. And it was eventually, that company was eventually sold in like 1999, I think it was. But what I'm saying to you is we are in an era when you talk about how could it get worse? It's the worst it could be. It can't get no worse. Yes, it can. It can always get worse. Yes, it can. We're not at the bottom. It can get worse. And when I say it gets worse, I mean everything gets privatized. Please don't forget what happened. Please don't forget what happened after we integrated. We had a whole bunch of white people say, you know what? We're going to have our own schools, religious schools, private schools, but we just going to pay for it. We see that happening now during COVID. So let me just bring this up. This is Town and Country. Sometimes you got to go far and in between to see what it really is. Posh or Pod or Resort Academy. The rich head back to school in a pandemic. Wealthy parents are doing the spending whatever it takes to ensure a smooth back to school experience. It turns out that the learning curve is steep. So let's read just a little bit of this and we'll get to it. Multi-page contracts, 4-page rentals, liability insurance. Welcome to the intricate, high-stakes, and expensive universe of running a learning pod in the midst of a global pandemic. For an increasing number of parents who have turned to this option, in effect creating their own schools, it is an endeavor that is proving more complicated than just inviting a few families over to have their kids learn together in the backyard. We had someone in the Hamptons ask if we could build a school on their property, said Joseph Connor, co-founder of Schoolhouse, a company that provides educational service. That's not exactly what we do. What Schoolhouse does do is facilitate the organization of pods, small groups of families who join together to hire a teacher, set a curriculum, and provide learning space for their school-age children. The service costs $14,000 per child for the year. Please pay close attention. Please do. That's $14,000. Now, I have heard on these Twitter streets that it's actually much more than that in terms of what these little schools and COVID-free enclaves cost. What I'm trying to say to you, fam, honestly, what I'm trying to say to you in terms of how it could get worse. The public trust is what this public space benefits us. When you make everything private, that's real money. Not no little bit of money. Come give me that. It ain't even $14K. That town and country lied. Come give me that 20, 25, that $40K a year for each kid. Come on. If you don't got it, okay, your kid don't get an education. You don't have any of the stuff or all of the stuff that we're privatizing. Okay, your kid don't get an education. What? You want to defund the police? Well, let's defund the police. And we're going to take all the police out your communities and let these other people run your community, right? Because every community has people, because of whatever's happened, who gonna break in your car, steal or whatever. Sometimes it's because they don't have. Sometimes it's just because of an addiction. We don't know what it is. So, okay, if you don't want the police, why don't you go buy your own private police? We're going to get in the private police business now. You buy your own private police. You don't want this police. How we going to buy the private police? We can't buy no Pinkertons. A lot of the people putting these ideas in our heads about what we need are people who don't live in our communities. I can't remember what the little man's name was who was calling for the private police, but he was born and raised in a white community. You don't get to come in here and not know what we deal with and call for that. We need to take control of the police who is here. And the only way we do that is changing the hierarchy in this country, which puts us higher up there than down here as a bottom caste. We get killed like trash because they view us as trash, because this whole country, that's what this whole country has done. You have to upend this whole country, and woo, that's a heavy lift, but you better be in for it or it ain't gonna work. And you better not be listening to nobody who sits in $1 million house talking about how they gonna be the police. They ain't never came outside, talking about everybody kind of come outside, but they'll never be outside. Take a 10-minute walk somewhere. That don't work. The police is the police. And if you say get them out of here, they're going to leave your community and go to the white community to protect them. We have to force them to protect us and say we're of value. You know something? Police are charged and go read the history to protect wealth. And we don't have none. And we should have some. And we're owed some. And that has to change. And that only changes through reparations. Right? That's the ADOS heartbeat of an overall black agenda. Reparations is the heartbeat of that. You have to turn this whole country upside down. And you do that through wealth. You don't do that through nothing else. We have to be up on the hierarchy. That's the way it works. That's the only way it works. You have to, and if you don't understand it, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I might as well just do little tap dance shoes. I don't know if you don't get that. But we have people who can't even bear their own mental pain without getting shot in the street. Defund the police is not that. Is not the answer to that. Reparations and a policy framework that comes with that is not talked about a lot. But we're going to eventually have to talk about what goes with reparations, because this is not just about the payment. The payment is key and essential, but there's so much more that goes with that is not talked about that. And I fault all of academia for not giving us the whole thing that goes with reparations. Academia has failed us, all of them. We're not talking about anybody specifically. Everybody has failed us by not giving us everything, that the policy framework for that. It's a heavy lift, but it's got to be lifted. And now is the time to build your muscle, because you could have someone. I have friends who have family and a sister or a brother who all of a sudden had just all of a sudden they were broken, and they had mental illness, and they had, some of them had not even exhibited any signs before. Right? They were normal, Yvette, I promise you, and all over a sudden they exhibited signs that they were fracturing, and that happens because of America. And this reparations and the framework, I've always said that lineage therapy has to be a part of this. There has to be a comprehensive framework, and nobody has really dealt with that comprehensive framework. But ADOS is going to do it. That's what we're here for. And if you're in the chat, you're born for it. Just what it is. Don't wonder, can I do it? I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can feel it. No, you can. If you couldn't, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here having a conversation. So we're going to talk about, when you call in, we're all going to talk about the protests. We're going to talk about, if you want to talk about mental health, we can do that too. We're going to talk about all of it. But I'm going to go to break now, give everybody a chance to call in and have the conversation. And yeah, let's have that conversation, because, you know, it is a conversation that we don't have enough in terms of how the police react to us when they get to our house if they find somebody who has a mental issue. So give me a few minutes as usual to set up the calls. I will be back and we'll have a conversation. We are back. We are back. We are back. I am in the call, so I'm going to just go to the calls and go to them as quickly as I can. I am going right now to 760. What is your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. My name is Marlon. I'm calling from Oceanside, California. I did not want to be first.
Well, and there you are. What's on your mind?
I like to talk about three things: the mental health you were talking about, the Americans that want to do an insurrection, and the police thing, if I may.
Okay.
All right. So for the mental health, your last show is that you were saying before you're raising raceless children. So basically, they don't know the history of us. So when they face it and they see how it is, you can steal them in the knowledge of their true history. So when they face the racism they have outside, suicide is one of the answers they have to cope with as a coping mechanism.
So you saying that they haven't been raised as ADOS, so they not prepared for what they're gonna come up against?
That's exactly right. You had too many Fresh Princes of Bel-Airs, all that culture business, and then when you have it, this is what happens.
I can see that. I can understand that. I can see that. I can see that. If you raised to think you're white, and then you run up against the like ADOSness, I can see how you would know how to deal. Yeah, I can see that.
And the Black Americans or Americans that want the open insurrection against, I don't know, the government. If you can talk to an infantryman that went overseas and you can see the wrath of destruction of people, places, and things that we have done, you have no idea what you're up against. You have trained, you have not the knowledge, you have not the physical ability, and if you think you do, you have no idea. You would think the billions of dollars the United States spends to gear up the people in the military and the equipment they have, you're going to take them with an AR? You're insane. Talk about Apaches, tanks, drones. You have no idea what you're up against.
Well, and I think I kind of wonder about people who say stuff like that. Like, I wonder if they're mental sometimes. Because it's not even like we're doing a time, when people talk about previous revolts or rebellions, that was also during a different era. One thing you didn't even talk about was surveillance. Like, you wouldn't even be able to hide yourself and hide your conversations. Like, what are you talking about? And it just kind of makes me feel like at some point everybody's going to have to get real and get honest about what is the capacity. Now, it's good to sit off somewhere and kind of promote this as your funding mechanism. But when it comes to the truth of like what is possible and even what is suggestible or what is like, these people aren't making any sense. And what they do is they take people away from the political movement. So no, I'm down with this. And whenever anybody else get down with this, I'm going to be down with them. And it's like, no, you're just wasting time. And you could be a part of something that actually matters. So I'll let you finish, fam. I'm sorry.
No problem. And the police, when you're talking about the Pinkertons, remember the turn of the century with the Keystone Cops? Like the black and white things with the cops doing all goofy stuff. They beat up people and all that kind of, in a comedic manner. Like early century America never liked cops because all the things you talk about in that Pinkerton article. So they're just fulfilling what they are. They're just interior guard. They're basically the acronym POPR, preserve order, protect property, enforce regulations. That's what they are. They're not about, like you said, the citizenry, the people. They're about property, order, and regulations. That's it. And then that's it. Thanks for taking my call.
No, thank you, fam. I appreciate you calling in. Yeah, that's what they are. And you have to understand that, like, the thing is to protect property. And then you have to ask yourself, why don't I have no property anyway? Not that we're not going to talk about the right or wrongness of whether that, but why don't I have none? Like, what happened to it? Oh, they stole it all. Okay, let's understand how we got here. I'm going to 770. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, yes, my name is Juanita,
Hey, Juanita.
and I'm calling from Atlanta.
What's going on with
Not a whole lot.
you?
Thankfully, just getting beat up trying to convince people to vote Democratic down ballot. I've given up. I need my mental health.
Got to. Got to. Got
I
to. We can't
do
lose
it.
you. We can't lose you. You gotta
But
keep it.
What I wanted to say is that I'm from Chicago. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I've been watching Crooked Police since I was 10 years old.
Mm.
And I've never liked the police. They're just a necessary evil. And I can honestly say that I would never call the police unless there was no other way to settle the situation.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust them. I don't think that they're for me as an ADOS woman. And frankly, I think they'd probably kill me before they would help me.
Mm.
So,
Somebody.
I mean, because when I was a kid, I watched them plant drugs on people.
Oh.
I watched them do that. I was 10 years old. I'll never forget it. I was standing on the people from Chicago know when you say you're standing on the front, you're standing on the outside, on the sidewalk in front of your house. And I'm standing up there with my girlfriend, and the police pull up on this guy. They snatch him out the car. And then I saw one of them pull something up out his pocket, reach down and said, "Look what we found in your car."
Mm.
And they didn't care. We were standing up there looking at them. And yes, it was a bunch of white policemen.
Absolutely.
But I also have to say that a lot of the ADOS ones aren't any better. In fact, I think some of them are a little worse.
Well, because fam, you can't internalize white supremacy. That's what people don't understand. You can't internalize white supremacy because at a certain point you got to make a choice, and we all got to make a choice. Do I stand for careerism and rising in the ranks, or do I stand for ADOS? And I think when you see those cops you talked about, they have decided, listen, I got to do what's best for me. I got to do what's best for my career. I got to eat. And so I don't stand with ADOS. I stand for me. But what I will say too is that there's never been a consequence in terms of not standing with your own people. We just kind of be like, well, he got to do, I got to do. Like, you have to say, no, we are a group and you have to behave fairly. If you are a police officer and you are ADOS, you have to behave fairly. Even if that has consequences. Like, everybody got to live the consequences. That's just what it is. So I'm sorry, fam. Go ahead.
No, you're right. And you hear a lot of excuses about why they do what they do. But the bottom line is, in my experience, 9 out of 10 times, I know it's gonna sound real messed up, but you almost want to see a white one before you see a black one, because black ones try to do too much.
They try to really act up, don't they?
If you see a black one and a white one together, you know that, and I'm not calling them ADOS, I'm demoting them to black. You know that black one is going to do too much. They're going to overcompensate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're trying to prove themselves.
They're going to stand back and let the white one do whatever they want.
Yeah, they're trying to prove themselves. They're trying to prove that they don't have any allegiance to us. Like, that's what they're trying to prove. I don't have no allegiance to them. I'll beat them up. I'll beat them up worse than you can. That's how I'm going to prove to you that I don't have no allegiance to them.
Yeah.
And if that's the cost, I don't want it.
But that is what it is. But in terms of the mental health situation, I know that growing up where I grew up, seeing the things that I saw, it had mental health consequences. Now, I'm not crazy, but there's some consequences behind it.
Yeah.
I think I got a little bit of PTSD from hearing all those guns go off when I was a little kid and seeing people shot.
Absolutely.
And watching people get beat up by the police. When I was a kid, that traumatized me.
Absolutely.
But will I go to a mental health professional about that? No.
Now, would you go to a ADOS?
Go around anyway.
Would you go to an ADOS mental health professional, or would you just not go to any mental health professional about your PTSD?
I would go to an ADOS mental health professional.
Okay.
You know, if it's ADOS and then there's ADOS. I mean, I'd have to kind of feel them out.
But let me just say this. I understand, but I think it would be helpful too if you went to an ADOS mental health professional that was from where you're from. So if you have a conversation and they say, yeah, I grew up there too, and I heard the bullets too. Like, and so, you know, I think I think when we talk about mental health professionals too, there has to be some matching, right? Because, you know, in terms of how and where you grew up, somebody who ADOS person, and I'm I'm not trying to say nothing about any ADOS that grew up. We're just regional in certain ways. We're all ADOS, but we have regional say, what I would ask, and what I'm trying to figure out is, and what's kind of complicated is, like, you know, an ADOS person who comes from Oklahoma is still ADOS, but like maybe they didn't have your experience. Now, and a Black American person may be Black, but they're not ADOS, and they didn't have that experience either. So you have to like see who kind of can experientially deal with and treat what you went through when you heard those bullets. Am I hearing that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, I'm just fortunate. You know, I'm very fortunate. I got a chance to go to college. I'm a registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
I make a decent amount of money. I managed to pay my student loans off because I got part of them forgiven.
Oh, good.
But I know I'm the exception. I'm not the rule.
Absolutely.
You know, I know that, and I don't want to be an exception. I think that my life should be the rule. When I look at I don't have any children, but when I look at my nieces and my great nieces, I want to see them better. You know?
Yeah. Well,
I want to see them better. I don't want to see them constantly having to start over from zero.
Every generation starts over from zero. Ain't that something? Like, you want to be able to
start over from zero. Constantly.
Yeah. You want to be a part of a group that, like, everybody's, you know, unless they have some type of individual struggle, which is not a systemic struggle, that they have the opportunity to be upwardly mobile, right? Just and have whatever you have, and y'all can exactly.
Exactly. You know, I'm fortunate in that, you know, when my nieces were in college, number one, they were really smart girls and they got scholarships. And number two, I was in a position where I could help them some. Everybody doesn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm really aware, and it's like, you know, I don't want to say I'm angry about it. I'm really, really angry. Because when I was brought up, they said, you know, shut up and smile and keep your head down and work really hard and you'll get there.
Absolutely.
And that's not true.
They lied to you.
That's not true.
You just say it straight. They lied to you. Yeah.
Right. They lied. The only thing that saved me was that we have a couple of Black Panthers in the family, and I always heard them in my ear, and so that kept me from completely falling for the okie doke.
They knew what it was. Yeah, they knew what it was.
Out here working and all of that stuff. So, you know, I'm grateful for them. But most people don't. They just have people to say, go to college, get $100,000 worth of student loans, and then spend the rest of your life paying it off. Yeah.
Even if the society makes it difficult for you to pay it off.
You know, and that, the stress of having to pay off your student loans can make you need to see a mental health professional.
Yeah, because they won't stop calling, child. Ooh, they like the vulgar people. Yeah.
You know what? I agree that, you know, reparations is the only solution, because if you go to school, you end up owing a bunch of money, you in the hole, you starting off in the hole. If you don't go to school, you don't end up owing money, but you're still in the same hole. It's just like Adolf is just in a hole.
Yep. So you have to have a solution. See, that's the thing, fam. What you're saying is the
reparations.
Truth. Yeah, there has to be a solution. We can't keep being, because they used to tell us, well, if you go to school, well, if you study STEM, and it's just like, no, we know enough people who study STEM. And I'm not saying some individual people aren't successful, but we know enough people who've done these things that you said that, even if they have money, they're in a family where they're the only one, which is a burden in and of itself, to be the only person in the family. I've talked to so many of them, like I'm talking to you, like that's a burden of itself, to be the only one who has money to loan out or money to help. Like that's a mental health crisis in and of itself, when white families just have, everybody got their own gig and their own thing, and it's not that pressure of, oh, when auntie come over, we always gonna have to jump her, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. And when my mother was living and she was sick and needed home help, I was the one that had to pay for it because I was in the best position, and that was a lot. It was a lot.
I understand, and that's another reason to need mental health.
That was stressful.
Yeah, well, that's another reason to need to have a therapist on deck.
Right there, because I had to do it, so that meant I had to work like 4 and 5 12-hour shifts a week. So I wasn't, and I did that for a couple of years because I needed the money.
Well, and let me just add to
what. Let me just add to what. I was able to do that and get the money.
But I think it's good that you were able to do that. Let me just say that. Let me just say something else though. You weren't even able. Yes, you were able to get the money to take care of your mother, but I don't even think we understand that. What kind of getting the money to take care of people means that, like, if we have somebody who is passing, we can't even spend time with the people. Like, right? So you don't even, I got to pay for this stuff. So I can't just, like, sit with you and be with you because I know you're not going to be here forever. Like, it's just kind of robbed us of like humanity in a way. And that's what it's always done, though. It's not surprising, but I just want to hear your last thoughts on that, fam.
It did rob me of it because all I did was work. And of course I had to go to sleep. And, I spent as much time with my mother as I could. But it wasn't like this white nurse that I worked with who was in the same position as me. And she was, talking about it. But her family put the money together to take care of their mother. So it wasn't all on her. And then she had a husband. So she said we had to give our share. It wasn't just her.
Share, not we pay the whole thing, share.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right, it was for them. They divided it up, and it wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal to them, but not like, it was nothing like what I was going through.
Absolutely.
Big deal to them was I was living in Chicago, and they had to go to Wisconsin instead of Disney World on vacation.
So I got to skip my vacation because mama's sick. Not like I got to be here all the time, work 12 hours, go to sleep, get up and do it again and again and again because I don't have nobody to help me. Yeah, you don't know what real pain is then. You don't know what being ADOS is, and that's why we're a unique group. But yeah, fam, you're right.
That's it exactly. And in terms of these people with the private police and all of that, you can already see that coming.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody think about it. Whenever something is jumping off, whenever the riot comes, the police will let Adolf tear up Adolf. But they're going to get in the line so you don't come over there with the white folks.
Protecting wealth. Ain't no wealth over here. You're exactly right, fam.
In your own area.
Exactly. I experienced that. Well, you're right, fam, and that's Adolf's life. And I think, I appreciate you calling in. I thank you. Thank you, fam. And I think, we're going to, I think we're going to have to find everybody some kind of, I don't think we understand how much we even need mental health. Like, until we break. Like, most Adolfs, until we break, we don't even understand, like, I need to go see somebody. Like, and I think she's absolutely right. We don't understand it. We haven't seen enough of white life to understand, like, okay, this is something that I haven't had access to. What? They're just complaining about not going to Disney World or whatever. What y'all saying? Adolf's life, and that shouldn't be our life. That's the takeaway. Anyway, let me go to the next caller. I'm going to 804. 804, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yes, my name is Greg. I'm calling from Mechanicsville, Virginia, and it's a pleasure to be on the show with you tonight.
Thank you. How you doing, fam?
I'm doing good. The recent Philadelphia shooting really hits home for me because my story starts in 1965 in Camden, New Jersey, about 2 miles away from where that incident occurred.
Okay.
And I really grew up in an insulated environment during that time. The city of Camden, which was 90+% black, had an all-black police force. We grew up with police officers on our street who taught us how to conduct ourselves as young men around the police and look out for us. And we only ran into difficulty with the police when we would cross that bridge and go over into the city of Philadelphia, where you had those racist Italian police officers that just looked at you as human prey. And I'm 55 years old, and I can still recall incidences of being harassed and attacked by Philadelphia police officers. When you were in the city, when you were shopping, when you were going to the sporting events to see the professional teams over there, it was just crazy. And then you take a 2-minute train, a 2-mile train ride back to Camden, New Jersey, and you're back in this black Mecca where it wasn't high crime then. And the only time in Camden we were so insulated, the only time we saw something that wasn't black was when we went to the mall or the 2 or 3 teachers we had at school. So if you can imagine going from that extreme to taking a 2-mile bridge ride over into Philadelphia, and you would be subjected to all that racism. And it's just that the Philadelphia Police Department and that police force, they just don't value, the black citizens of the city or the black citizens that patronize Philadelphia. And from a mental health standpoint, I can relate to it is because my mother was a school teacher in the city of Camden for 47 years, and she taught the mentally handicapped. So I grew up my entire life around mentally handicapped children, young teenagers, and even some young adults. And I know how even then, and again, I was born in 65, I know how even then, in the system, when there was a police call in the city of Camden, just like they would be able to pull up in the database what your criminal record was, it would also pull up your mental profile. Now, if this was going on back in the 70s and 80s, I know it goes on now with modern technology because I'm in the IT field and I know these databases are all cross-connected. So in this latest incident in Philadelphia, if they were able to identify that this gentleman had a criminal record, previous violent acts, etc., it also could have been in his profile that he had mental issues and they could have approached him with a different level of care and not deadly force. Because you see several instances where it may be a Caucasian police officer and a Caucasian person causing a disturbance, and they're handled totally differently. So, we just got to face it that they don't value us, and we can never, let our guard down and think it like that.
Well, fam, I saw a video somewhere where it was a bunch of white boys with hockey sticks just beating a police car or something, and there was a police person in there.
Right.
So I don't even know what people are talking about. Like, what are you doing? These people are wild alley cats, and y'all killing us. No, the wild alley cat is there. They are instigating police. Like, not having a mental health crisis, just instigating police, and y'all don't even really talk about it. It don't make major news or nothing. We just see it on YouTube.
Right. There's a more recent video, I think it's out in the Midwest, where a white male is attacking a female white police officer with a knife. She runs from the gentleman for about 5 minutes till her backup comes. And then she fires her weapon one time and takes the person down. He wasn't killed. She shot her weapon one time, disabled him, took the person down. They handcuffed him. He lived to see another day because they value each other.
Yep.
They don't value us. And I just got to also just compliment you on one major thing. Like I mentioned, my story starts in 1965 in Camden, New Jersey, but it goes much deeper. And that's because I listened to your show, and it sparked me to do my research. In the past 2 to 3 years, listening to your show, I spoke with my elders. And my elders are from rural Georgia, Bremen, Georgia, and Carrollton, Georgia. Both of my grandparents on my mother and my father's side, they come from slaves and plantations right there in Georgia. And had I not listened to your lectures to really spark my curiosity to talk to a lot of my elders before they passed on, I wouldn't have known that. So I just want to thank you and Tone for sparking the germ for me to do research to find out that I know that I'm a descendant of slaves, and I'm back in this movement till the wheels fall off.
All right, fam. I appreciate you. Till the wheels fall off. Y'all got to Fred Flintstone this thing. I appreciate you for calling in, fam. But yeah, and those of you who have elders who are still around, talk to them. Have a conversation about what they went through. I had a great I wouldn't even know that what she went through in terms of the KKK until before she passed. She told me they used to roam through the neighborhood and burn crosses and everybody here. I wouldn't have known that. There was no way for me to have known that. You know, sometimes it's good if you have people who are still around to kind of have that conversation and kind of have that conversation about your lineage and your history and what that is and what that looks like and what they've been through. It feels different. You know, reading it in a book is one thing. Listening to them tell you about it, it hit different. So I'm happy we were able to do that for that brother. He's absolutely right. I'm going to my next caller. I am going to 267. 267. I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. My name is Renee, and I'm calling from Philadelphia.
Hey, Renee.
And I'm calling right. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Excuse my voice. I had an operation. I had a tube down my throat, so
are you all right?
My voice is a little raspy.
Okay, you doing good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I said I'm fine, doing fine, better than most.
Oh, that's good.
But anyway, I grew up in that neighborhood where all the violence is.
Okay.
And also, I'm in my 50s, so I also grew up in the time of Rizzo. And Rizzo used to always harass the guys on the corner. They would stand around the corners and they would clear the corners.
Well, tell everybody who that is. You said Rizzo. Tell everybody the context.
Oh, Rizzo, he died, but he was a mayor a long time ago.
Okay.
And he was known for harassing Black Americans. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, they had a statue of him around in front of our municipal services building, which was around City Hall, and people defaced his statue because of his racism. So he was infamous. As a matter of fact, he used to get international attention for his antics. He was like the Donald Trump of Philadelphia.
Oh wow, that's a good way to put it.
Back in the day. Yeah. So as a matter of fact, you remember? I don't know if you heard of the Move incident.
Yes, I have.
In Philadelphia.
I have. Yes. Absolutely.
He was the first mayor to have a confrontation with the Move. And he had everything bulldozed down and all the evidence disappear.
Mm-hmm. That's why I always say get a context. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. It's good we have cameras now. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I lived in that neighborhood, like I said, for a long time, over 35 years. And I live not too far from there. And I also have, relatives that have a store. But the makeup of the neighborhood is interesting. Basically, you have a lot of Korean stores around here. You don't really have a lot of Black-owned stores. Most of your Black-owned stores around there are mostly your barbershops. And my relative has the only clothes store around there, or only best store, but it's mostly Korean and usually they don't treat the residents that well.
Mm.
But when I looked at the riot and how it transpired, because I saw it on TV, there were only like 30 people that started in that riot, or it wasn't a riot; it was really a protest.
Mm-hmm.
And they were speaking on a loudspeaker, and one person was saying that, you know, we shouldn't be voting for Biden because he's, you know, another cop and he's not good for our people. And as the person was walking and talking, you had other protesters that were shouting like at the police. The police showed up in riot gear with shields, for only like 30 people at first.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them progressing and keep walking down the street. They like walked from, it looked like 57th and Market Street, and they walked all the way back toward 52nd Street, which is where all the stores, like the major stores, are in West Philadelphia. And then it looked like they kind of guided him up from, you know, made a right on 52nd Street all the way to Chestnut Street, which was where mostly all the Korean stores were. And I noticed they started putting the cameras at the sneaker shop to make it look like it was about looting.
Mm.
And so there were some people that were looting, you know, sneakers, but it was a real protest. They made it seem like it was, you know, violence and everything, but it looked like the police escalated it, and they showed up with riot gear, with shields, and they were ready for a confrontation.
Well, we've seen them do that.
And it just turned into something else.
We've seen them do that throughout the protests. We have seen them show up, push people to the ground, push old people to the ground. We've seen them do stuff that escalates the protest. So I would not be surprised if that's what we saw. Because what they do is they escalate the protest, and then they say, oh my God, these Negroes are really misbehaving. And it's like, no, you escalated everything when you got here.
Yes, and then you have a lot of, there were some white people there, because usually that neighborhood, you know, my old neighborhood's there's not a lot of white people there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting, but it looks like there may have been some provocateurs there in that neighborhood, you know, at the time.
Antifa was acting up over there.
And then it turned into something bigger.
Mm. Yeah, we saw a lot of that during previous protests too. The white people was knocking out windows and spraying paint BLM and stuff on stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that paint Antifa on whatever you tear down. Whatever you tear down, white people, paint Antifa on it. Don't paint BLM or whatever you want to paint on it. We know that's a leaderless movement.
Right.
Like, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Paint your own name. Go ahead, fam. I'm sorry.
That's true, because that happened the last time, because even on 52nd Street, when they had the first riot, it was very interesting because most of the places that were broken into were, I guess, Koreans that gave black people a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of their stores were broken into, but the Koreans that were nice to the residents, their stores weren't broken into.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Which was really interesting.
It was a payback time.
But also,
somewhat.
Yeah. But also, I want to tell you about another dynamic about Philadelphia that's kind of missed. It helps to aspirate the mental health issue. Right now, in addition to your policing, you have also your school to prison pipeline in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And also they don't you have a lot of white teachers in Philadelphia that are teaching black children. So they have a different culture than we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I have two children that went through the school system, and I used to have a hard time with some of the teachers, because of how they treated black boys,
mm-hmm.
especially black girls and black boys. But one teacher that my child had wanted to write up a behavior plan on him when he was little, because he was in line and they were kicking each other, and the little boy was aggravating him, and then she called me up and she said, well, I was going to suspend your child, but but I knew that they were playing, so I didn't do it. But I think we need to put your son on a behavior plan. And I told her, if you put my child on that SH, I said, we're going to have a problem. So she backed down. But that's but that's very, very, that's very, that happens very often in the Philadelphia school system. They make excuses they make excuses to put our children in institutions. I had so many run-ins with teachers and educators in the Philadelphia school system where they try to institutionalize and also cause mental health issues in children. Even there were some times when teachers wanted to talk to my children alone, and I wouldn't allow it. So they could harass my children with me not around. So
absolutely,
Philadelphia
you can
an interesting dynamic, and I'll leave you with this one last thing.
Go ahead, fam. Okay.
Yes, I had family members that used to also, be in the political world, and they went to a meeting in Philadelphia, and they had a meeting about prisons, and they had investors in the prisons, and they were promising the prison investors that the prisons would have 85% occupancy.
Yep, I remember that.
And they based it on the children's test scores. So Philadelphia has a lot of problems.
Absolutely. Thank you, fam. I appreciate that. That was a mouthful, but I absolutely appreciate that, because it's great coming from somebody who's there as well, who can tell us exactly what happened. And she brought up another good point that we don't really talk about in terms of, you got to kind of, if your kid is back in school, and those kids are all going to be eventually back in school at some point, you have to make sure you ask your kids the right questions too when they get home about what happened at school. Or you won't even know that a teacher did something to damage your child that will come up later in life in terms of who they are, their self-esteem, their self-worth, their competency. So sometimes you also have to get trained in asking your kids the right questions, because you won't even know that a teacher met with your kid alone, or a teacher said something to your kid that hurt your kid or whatever. Sometimes kids don't want to even share that kind of stuff. You have to be very adept at how you kind of, I don't want to say interrogate your own child, because that's not what you're doing, because you're doing it in love. You're a parent. But you have to ask your child kind of at the dinner table or wherever y'all eat, probing questions that let you know what might have kind of hurt my child today, what might have bothered my child, what did my child learn, what did my child discover, what did my child enjoy, because I want to help bring joy to my child's life. So what did my child enjoy? You have to kind of be able to ask that, because your child will grow up and you won't even know why your child got low self-esteem, and you can trace it all the way back to the early school teachers and the 7th grade teachers. So that's a very good point in terms of how to deal with your kids. But I'm going to the next call. I'm going now to 857. What is your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, fam. What's going on?
My name is Alonzo Johnson, and I'm from Boston. And I just want to let you know that me and my wife support you and Tone 100% in the ADOS movement. But I really wanted to talk specifically about mental health.
Okay.
Because you brought up something about, you said to another caller, would you talk to an ADOS therapist or psychiatrist, or have you ever? And I'm a veteran, airborne infantryman in the United States Army, and I currently talk to therapists and psychiatrists, and I honestly would not want to talk to an ADOS counselor or therapist. I never have, and the reason being is because everything I need to say
white folks need to hear it. And I have my session. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, fam. I'm listening.
And when I have my session with my therapist, I stress that I was in Panama to capture Noriega, jumping out of airplanes on this man's front lawn for people that hate the color of my skin. And I'm really, really upset about me doing that. But I was a young man at the time, 17, 18, 19 years old, dropped out of high school. But just to talk about what you said about specifically talking to an ADOS psychiatrist, I wouldn't have no problem with it. But I would rather talk to these white women, and I would rather talk to these white men, and I want to, I love giving them the truth of what it is. And they are very uncomfortable when they have sessions with me, and they have help walking around, but it has helped me. It's worked for me, and so help, I believe, majority, if not all, of ADOS has it from our experience in this country. But I don't want to be too long.
I didn't even think about that, fam.
I just wanted to.
I didn't even think about that, though. I said I didn't even think about that. Like what you're saying is something I didn't even think about. In the sense of you are educating white people on what it is to be ADOS in this country and what I have lived through. And
yes, and you should see the guilt, and you should see the body language and the facial expressions. I said to one of my therapists, I said, I don't want to sound like a victim, because talk about more than just my experience in the military. So I talk about my family history, my life growing up, because I was born and watched Nixon Guard projects. So I grew up as a gang member, and we moved to Boston. Like I said, I didn't want to be too long, but you should see the uncomfortableness in them, and I said to a young lady, I don't want to sound like a victim, because I know that I'm the last person on this earth that's a victim. I promise you that I'm not a victim. Everybody else outside of me is a victim, but not me. And she said, but I said, but I do feel like a victim talking to you about, my life experiences. Does that make sense? And she said, Alonzo, you know what? You are not a victim, and you just trying to work through whatever situation where you just trying to, and I believe that you don't have to, think like that when you come to opening up or whatever. Because I said to her, I said, I'm gonna be one of the guys that's not gonna be begging for his life when the cops kill me or I run into rednecks, because I promise you, it's gonna be more than my blood shed when I die. So I just wanted her to and myself to understand that even though I'm here expressing what I've been through as a child and as a young man, that I know that I'm not a victim, even though it may sound like that. And I just was trying to see if she comprehended what I was saying, and she did. And like I said, I don't think I would want to talk to a ADOS therapist, but I don't want to hold you up too long. I appreciated me talking to you. I didn't think I was going to get through. Me and my wife, we from Boston. support you and Tone 100%. And y'all please keep doing what you're doing, because we and a whole bunch of other black folks, all of my peoples, is rolling with the movement.
Thank you, fam. Thank you, fam. I appreciate you, and make sure you tell your wife I said what's up. Tell her I said what's up, and tell her Yvette said hello, fam. I thank you, and I thank you for your service. I think too many military people who are our people get a bad rep because we went into Adolf went into the military. Sometimes because we were trying to prove our Americanness. Sometimes we didn't have other choices, other opportunities. So thank you for your service, sir. I appreciate you. And I didn't even think about it from that point of view of like, you have to find a way, and this is a good way of educating white people and kind of burdening them as your therapist about what you went through. I didn't even think about that, but you make a good point. And I even understand what he says about not being a victim, right? Because he's going to stand regardless of who comes at him. The only thing I will say, like, he has been victimized, but I understand why he doesn't view himself as a victim. You can be victimized, but say, I'm standing on my own, I'm going to fight my own, I'm nobody's victim. I fought a fight. I was victimized, whatever. I came up, I fought, and that's what it is. I didn't think about that, and I appreciate that perspective. I honestly appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate the call. And anything else I can say other than that, and shout out to you and your family. I appreciate it. I would never have had that perspective because I have never have had that experience, right? Some things come from data, some things come from storytelling, some stuff comes from having that experience and being able to relay it. So thank you, fam. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. Wow, I would never have thought of that. I'm going to go to my next call. I'm going to 646. 646. What is your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Sloan. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Not bad. Boy, I was going to talk about something else. My goodness, but the last call. Oh gosh, one thing. When they said defund the police, I think you're just saying the wrong thing. What you want to do is just what we call, take the weapons away, demilitarize the police. That's what it should be. But what the brother was talking about is kind of interesting, and the stuff that we face, because it's come to such a point. I think when people say, well, like you mentioned, it can't get much worse. But I think it can, because what happens is every time we voted against our own interests, and this last thing, when everybody's voting for Biden, it just blows my mind. Talk about voting against your own interests. This is unbelievable to me. Okay, but let me go to what the brother was saying about his this thing. I had an experience a long time ago, actually keeps on coming up in the different guises, that I was in charge of a bunch of well, let me put it, it's called a cadet corps. And what they did one year, they had this like summer academy every year. And so one time they basically said, well, let's take all the bad kids and put them in one grouping. And then they sort of say, well, who can we put back in charge of these people? And they put me in charge because of just the way my brain thinks. And that was the best platoon I ever had. These are all the troubled kids. But because we focused them, and because I had certain skills doing theater at the time, that they came together. It was really amazing to see how these so-called troubled kids would come together, because they were all, it doesn't they were labeled that, but they were labeled that. They knew they were all so-called troubled kids, but because they had something else to do, some focus, it changed them, and it affected the whole place. Everybody said, "Whoa, this is kind of interesting." So anyway, I think our therapy actually lies in, we could say ADS. Our therapy lies in having a goal that we can clearly see, and everybody can go towards. And I think that reparations would probably be that thing. So anyway, kudos to all the work.
So therapy lies in having a goal that we can all go towards. Is that what you're saying? Like that's the cohesive part of it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Now, the situation is, you can label somebody ADOS, or everybody, they could be ADOS, but then they have to embrace. I don't like to say ADOS movement as much as an ADOS reality, because if you say movement, you're moving towards something. But if you say I want to go to this specific reality, then people get very focused. You understand what I'm trying to say?
I think I get it. I think I understand what you're saying. They focus on the granular. They focus on the granular reality of their life. You saying that like you have to focus people on like their life, like the reality of your ADOS life. If I'm hearing right.
Well, not exactly. I'm talking about no. The reality of the ADOS life is going to keep them in their little malaise. You have to focus on a reality that you want to create.
Oh, okay.
In other words, what you're saying, so for ADOS, when they say ADOS, they think it means this or that. But no, so ADOS means this, and we have created, look, you've labeled us correctly, okay? So now that everybody knows who we are, or we know who we are, now we have to not just move in a certain direction. What we need to do is say, this is what it means to be ADOS in a situation we're supposed to be in. So we're moving towards this reality. No, not the reality that the academics say, not the reality that the Biden say or the Kamala say, not the reality that the society say, the reality that we say. And what we have to do, what we will do as we move, we're moving towards a specific reality that's going to give us a specific liberation. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. We have to self-actualize. So we're self-actualizing towards a different reality. That's what it is. So it's this reality that we can talk about movement, but this is the reality that we're supposed to have, and this is so you're talking about that in terms of, and it's a very specific thing in terms of just not being moving, but having a reality right here, right? In terms of
yes, a reality to move to, yes, towards.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
Towards.
What does this life? What does this reality look like? Not just the movement in terms of getting us there. This reality, what is it? What is this thing? So I get what you're saying. I understand that. That makes sense.
So, I'll end here, but so you're doing it already. So as soon as you get when you do the 501c4, that's part of building that reality. And then when that comes across, then people will start, they start thinking differently, and they'll have the goals and everything. Anyway, I'm looking forward to next year's conference.
Appreciate it, man.
Like 2 years away from where it's going.
Oh
my goodness!
I appreciate you,
man. You have no idea.
Me too.
I'm stuck here. This is unbelievable. I can't believe it. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in the Eastern Cape of Southern Africa doing the work I've been doing. And I'm getting really
see, what you is.
Please mask up so I can get out of this joint. Okay.
Appreciate it, fam. You have a good one. You have a good one. Yeah, we have just a specific reality. So I understand. I think I understand what he's saying. I'm going now to 215. 215. What is your name? Where you calling from? What is on your mind?
Hello, Yvette. This is Mike from Philadelphia. How you doing?
Pretty good, Mike. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I was just gonna give a quick little rundown about the situation in Philadelphia, the police department, and the city itself, and the dynamics that have kind of contributed to this, situation we find ourselves in. Firstly, Philadelphia is the poorest large city in America. As it relates to all of the conversations about economics and ADOS in this country, Philadelphia is the poorest large city in America. It's also an extremely segregated city where many of the black folks live in North Philly, West Philly, parts of South Philly still where they haven't been gentrified out. And all of the white folks tend to live up in what's called Northeast Philly. Northeast Philly is also the home base where a lot of the folks who are police in the city come from. And there's a long-running animosity where a lot of the folks currently in Northeast Philly lived in various other neighborhoods throughout different decades within Philadelphia, and have kind of been moved, relocated, pushed to this upper northeast corner of the city. Now, a lot of these folks are police, as I mentioned, so they come onto the force with, not denigrating in any way a high school education, but they're coming onto a force 18, 19, 20 years old with a high school education and being expected to deal with something like a mental health crisis, which we saw going on in West Philly the other night. They're not capable of doing that. And they've already got this built-in animosity where they're like, hey, my dad grew up in this neighborhood and now look at it and feeling some sort of way as they're patrolling our streets and our citizens with this axe already sort of to grind when they do encounter us. The other thing I'll say is that Philadelphia is an extremely strong union town. One of the last, I don't know if there's another union town in the country that's as strong as Philadelphia, and the strongest of all the unions in Philadelphia is the police union. They're able to hold the city hostage when it comes to budgetary issues, when they want certain rules around overtime, they get that. There's been a whole litany of articles written by the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is the paper of record of the city, about all of the overtime scamming and different things that they've done to bleed the city in all sorts of different ways, and nobody's ever held accountable for these things. There was a great article that actually won a Pulitzer, written in 2009, that goes by the name Tainted Justice, which documented an entire narcotics squad that was robbing stores, falsifying undercover informant reports, and doing all sorts of activity that would get any regular citizen locked up for an extended length of time. And those reporters actually followed up with some of the stuff they couldn't put in the paper in a book later titled Busted, A Tale of Corruption and Betrayal in the City of Brotherly Love. And it goes on and on and on. Commissioner Charles Ramsey, who was the commissioner of the city for a while, tried to do his best to clean up some of the things going on there. I don't know if folks are familiar with him, but he was tapped for the 21st Century Policing Task Force project that went on under the Obama administration. But he did try to do a few things, and he ended up dismissing, I think, somewhere in the range of 100 to 150 officers while he was there, with others lined up for dismissal. But I mean, there's just an overwhelmingly systemic problem with police that do not uphold their end of their credo, and when they are disciplined, it's usually a suspension and then brought right back onto the force. There was an incident at a Puerto Rican Day parade many years ago where an officer was caught on camera by CNN and other local outlets actually striking a woman in the face who he thought had splashed him with water. He was dismissed for about a year, filed a grievance, the union, back on the street within 2 years. So there's just a massive problem in the city when it comes to dealing with police corruption, and it is documented. If folks want to do the research, there's a litany of articles they can find through the Philadelphia Inquirer, Daily News in the city, but there just is a problem, and there's a long-standing segregation of neighborhoods and racial animus that goes back, touching on what the gentleman from Camden stated on earlier. Folks got pushed out of certain neighborhoods, they feel, and when they come back and they're part of the police unit, they tend to take out those long-standing animosities on the citizens themselves. If you've lived in Philadelphia in any way, shape, or form and are a Black American or ADOS, you've had several interactions with police. And I'm not going to say they're all bad and they've all been bad interactions, but we've all been harassed in some form or fashion and witnessed, completely beyond the pale behavior, whether it's, me personally having witnessed police arriving on the scene of a stolen car, which some younger teenagers had stolen and crashed. I watched the police from the window of a house I lived in steal the wheels off the car and put them in the back of a police cruiser after they had arrested the teens. Again, watched another teenage-looking aged kid running from the police, and rather than them chasing him on foot, they just hit him with their cruiser and sent him flying in the air. So, you just see all sorts of violent and beyond the pale behavior from the PPD, and they know that there will be no serious consequence to it. They can file their grievances with the union, and not only will they get their job back and put back on the street, but they'll also get the back pay due to how the union bylaws have been agreed upon by the city. And it's a place, again, the poorest large city in America, and they've always been able to hold any mayoral administration hostage when it comes to what they want in their next contract. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, I just want to say, fam, what you say, we had somebody call in earlier talking about the corruption they witnessed as a child. So, and then you're telling me about the corruption you witnessed. So what that tells me, while Joe Biden is telling us that violence is no excuse, is that no, we have corrupt police departments, right? That are anti-Black, anti-ADOS throughout America, and you don't talk to me until you fix them. Like, that is awful. You stole tires and throw them in it. What kind of thugs do that? What kind of thuggishness is this? So I think the fact that I had 2 calls talk about I have witnessed corrupt police officers in my life, I think that really says everything. That says everything.
Absolutely.
That says everything.
I could not concur more. And it's systemically, I think, an economic problem. Again, like I said, the poorest large city in America.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling in. Yeah. We know we're gonna have to get back to this. You know, it's 12:30, so I'm not gonna be able to continue to go. I love to talk to everybody all night, but I'm not gonna be able to continue to do that. But oh my goodness, I think that says everything, fam. I think that says everything, and we're gonna continue to have this conversation. So this is not gonna be the end of everything for us. We're gonna, you know, because you know we might have to just, whoo, that's a lot. I mean, somebody said bandits. Yeah, in the chat. Yeah, bandits. What is this? What kind of life is this? And how are we going to? And not only, sometimes we stay stuck in like the problem and not say, how do we move out of this? And I think we have prescribed the way to move out of this. The only thing we have to do is grow. But the fact that we had 2 people talk about, I have witnessed police corruption in my life. I think that was everything. And I don't think this story is over. We know how they treat us and how it probably might end, but we have to talk about how do we change that hierarchy? How does that happen? And so, you know, I don't think we have to stick together and move as a unit. And I think one of the things that we're doing as we move forward is that we're taking the gatekeepers out. You know, we're taking the gatekeepers out in terms of, no, you don't get to speak for us anymore. You don't get to talk for us anymore. You don't get to go and tell white people, well, what you need to do for them is XYZ. We're not doing that anymore. So I think that is where the start of this whole thing is. But goodness, fam, some calls tonight. That was just heavy. I want to wish everybody a good night. The Half Has Never Been Told. December the 10th is our book club. Please hit that like. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Please hit that bell. If you want to donate, go to donatebrown.com. $ Breaking Brown for the Cash App. Patreon.com/Wacarnell. And please go to subscribe-to-brown.com to add your name to my newsletter. Costs you absolutely nothing. And hitting that bell costs you nothing either. Hitting that subscribe button costs you nothing. If you're still in there, hitting that like costs you nothing. So hit it, costs you absolutely nothing. So, fam, until next time, peace be easy breezy. Please wear your mask. Because I don't know if y'all have been watching the news, but there's a bunch of other countries that are implementing lockdowns all over again, which means this thing is not about to be kind of right now. Ain't no vaccine, ain't no nothing. So wear your mask. And please, I'm seeing too many of y'all wearing it below your nose. It don't count if you wear it below your nose. The virus enters a lot of times through the nose. Put it over your nose. Put that thing up. I want to snatch it and pull it up for people, but I don't want to catch the COVID. So just do that, please. Please. And hit that like button for me, fam. And we will talk next time. Be easy breezy, fam.